We are ready to take our training to the next level. I think it is time you taught us the techniques of the Hado.
Hello, I'm Johnny, and welcome to the Way of the Fireball. I'm certainly not a master of the fireball yet, but I want to share with you how I've come to wield the fireball myself and how to navigate around them. So this should be helpful for both sides of the coin. So we're going to be taking a close look at the masters of the fireball in Street Fighter V. Fireballs are quite mysterious, I think. I thought I knew how they worked a little until I tried to wield them myself. And at first, all I can see are their flaws. How Street Fighter V is very anti-fireball, giving everyone in the cast an easy answer, making jump-ins so strong and rewarding, nerfing anti-airs. Now despite all this, I still see strong players using the fireball effectively. In card games or strategy tabletop games, I usually gravitate towards the controlling style, someone with the ability to restrict my opponent's movements or actions or resources, that kind of thing. I can't help but think of fighting games in similar ways to card games. When I started thinking of fireball characters in fighting games, like mages that control the pace of the match, I got real excited to learn more about the fireball game. And I thought it would come easy. Boy, was I wrong. Once I started to focus on controlling the pace of the match, I felt lost. Felt like there's no controlling these strong rushdown characters and keeping up with the tools at their disposal and their damage. This didn't discourage me though, rather it intrigued me. Although this doesn't come easy to me, I know that there are players out there that have mastered the fireball, so I can at least learn to use it effectively, right? I've been studying my mentors very closely and thinking about fireballs quite a bit. I finally feel like I'm in a space where I can share what I've learned and put it into words for you guys. I want to thank FGC Translated for breaking down barriers and letting us hear what our mentors have to say. So thank you. Now the Way of the Fireball is going to build a little on my series The Art of Footsies. If you haven't seen that yet, that's fine. I'm just going to be using some of the language and referring back to it a little bit. But if you haven't seen it, it's not necessary to understand these ideas, I don't think. And these ideas I'm going to share with you will probably live on to other iterations of Street Fighter. It's not only applicable to Street Fighter V. So, let's get into it. Let's start talking about why you would want to throw a fireball. Lord Daigo says that fireballs are a means to achieve your goal, that you should have a purpose to your fireballs and a goal in mind. He mentions building meter, cornering the opponent, restricting certain moves. Fireballs don't do a ton of damage to the health bar, but they do frustrate the opponent and make them feel like they're running out of options, whittling away at their patience and their focus and hopefully making it feel like you're the one in control of the match. You could say that fireballs do more mental damage than they do actual damage. So those are some of the reasons why you want to throw a fireball. Let's look a little closer at when to throw a fireball. The fireball is the ultimate poke. In Seth Killian's Domination 101 article, Controlling Space, he talks about thinking of a fireball as a poke, using the fireball at a certain range, much like you would with like a low forward. The fireball is a poke that cannot be whiff punished like a traditional normal. If thrown at a close distance, it can be nearly impossible to react to, especially if thrown when the opponent is approaching. Bonchan said he likes to throw fireballs when the opponent moves. Watch Bonchan throw these fireballs when he feels or sees that his opponent is moving forward. Just like in Chapter 4 of The Art of Footsies, we poke when the opponent is approaching to stop them. This is just poking with a fireball that can't be whiff punished like a traditional normal. David Serlin talks about attacking with fire in his book Playing to Win. He compares using fire as an ally in an actual war to fireballs in fighting games. And he says this: fireballs are basically independent attacking agents. Once a character spawns a projectile attack, that character is free to move and perform other attacks while the fireball does its thing, allowing basically 2 attacks at once. You can use the fireball to approach for you or cover you while you advance. Under the right conditions, it can be like calling an assist in a versus fighting game. 2 attacks at the same time. You can use a slow fireball to help you get into better position, take back space, or press your opponent to the corner. You may want to avoid getting cornered yourself. In chess, players fight for center. This applies very much to the fireball game. You don't want to be giving up that space so easily to your opponent. You want to fight for it. Like in Chapter 2 of the Art of Footsies, we can set up a common whiff punish scenario. Let the fireball do the approaching for you, then wait for their counterpoke. React to it and execute. Bonchan explains that you can throw safe fireballs when you throw them at a waiting opponent. He explains that when the opponent whiffs a poke, they will usually default to inputting block. Watch Bonchan throw these fireballs immediately after Mena whiffs attacks. The fireball does the approaching for you and is safe because we are throwing them when we predict that the opponent is blocking. You can absolutely whiff punish with fireballs. Sometimes it's a safer option to whiff punish with a fireball if you might be late. Sometimes if you have charge or it's the action that you had in mind, it may be the only logical whiff punish. Fast fireballs are great long distance whiff punish tools. Now let me explain something I call the magic fireball. The round begins at just the perfect distance for this magic fireball. Study this distance. If my opponent blocks my fireball from this distance, I can throw a second fireball and still have time to fully recover an anti-air. This is magic because you can throw the next fireball relatively safely and react to what your opponent will do. You have lots of time to anti-air, preemptively poke, approach, or whatever you like. The spacing for this is pretty delicate. Here is a properly spaced one and then one that's a little too close. This magic fireball works because of the distance it's connecting. At this space, your fireball is about plus 25 or so, meaning your next fireball comes out before your opponent can even input anything. This gives you a deceptive amount of time to recover. Fireballs are starting to sound pretty strong, right? What's the answer? The perfect answer is also the most rewarding. The jump. We all learn that jumping is bad because we surrender the ability to block. But a well-crafted jump can be devastating to a fireball thrower. If we get jumped on, we threw a predictable fireball and our opponent felt like it was coming. Now, we're gonna have to start playing footsies with fireballs. In Chapter 5 of the Art of Footsies, we learned that the heart of footsies is the feint. We feint by pretending to do the exact thing that our opponent is looking for. We can feint throwing fireballs by pressing a similar looking action if we know our opponent is looking closely to punish our fireball. By feinting attacks that look similar, we're adding noise to the signal, making the opponent have to look that much closer and question their own eyes. But this type of feint doesn't really work against jumps. Since the opponent is not reacting to the fireball animation, we must feint the fireball in a different way. We must feint throwing fireballs with our movement. We can simply back into the magic fireball distance. Our opponent may feel like we're going to throw a fireball when we reach this magic distance, but not this time. We've simply backed into the range to bait out their jump. Daigo is a master at this. Watch him back up into the magic fireball distance to bait the jump. Then he inches forward to anti-air. Beautiful. There's a beauty in the simplicity, yet the complexity of the fireball game. A yin to the yang. A jump to the fireball, yet an answer to the jump. This blows my mind. Our opponent can use the exact same movement that we use to bait out their jumps to bait out our fireballs. Watch Mago use the exact same movement to bait Daigo to throw a fireball and win the match. Just as Daigo does to bait his opponents to jump, Mago simply steps backward into the magic fireball distance, making Daigo tempted to throw that magic fireball. A yin to the yang. Harmony in the fireball game. On both sides, we can feint our movement to bait out each other's jumps and fireballs. Let's take a closer look at baiting out fireballs. Just like baiting out a traditional normal, we pretend to do the exact thing that our opponent is looking for. In this case, the thrower is looking or feeling out forward movement. If we notice that our opponent likes to throw fireballs as we're approaching forward, then we can pretend to approach, then jump. Bonchan is a master of the fireball, so he knows how to navigate them. Watch him inch forward to make his opponent feel like he can poke with a fireball. Bonchan baits out his opponent's safe fireball with simple movement and a read on his opponent's habits. There's another range to jump at a fireball from, kind of safely. Haitani explains that it's sometimes better to jump from further back. Let's take Zangief for example. If Zangief jumps from this distance, he can still punish a fireball because his legs extend into Ryu's extended hurtbox. It's tricky, but you can react to the opponent throwing a fireball while airborne. If the opponent didn't throw a fireball, now they have to decide whether to anti-air or not. Zangief could potentially reach Ryu and get some plus frames off this jump in, or Gief can press nothing and remain back at his original range. Now at this range, both players have to decide, is my opponent going to extend themselves or not? This little temptation can cause your opponent to whiff their DP, which is going to hurt big time. If you think about it, you're being deceptive with the range you're going to be at in the air. Air footsies? Air footsies. Air footsies. Air footsies. Air footsies. Ow. Bonchan speaks of this option but hasn't seen it develop really. And god dang, I looked high and low, I can't find a clip of this bait anywhere. If you can find it, let me know. Bonchan explains that he likes to throw fireballs when the opponent whiffs an attack because they default to block. So if your opponent's really good at this, then you can just whiff a normal, then jump instead of defaulting to block, right? Whiff an attack, then immediately jump forward to punish their predictable fireball. There's rhythm in all combats, in all sorts of things. Once you get a feel for that rhythm, then you can start reading and predicting your opponent's jumps or fireballs. If you're getting predictable, then take a moment to switch it up. Let there be empty beats to your rhythm.
5, 4, 3.
It could be a battle itself to fight your own rhythm, though.
3.
Yagyu Munenori wrote of timings in sword combat. Do not allow yourself to be drawn into the opponent's timing. If you synchronize your timing to his, he is in control of the fight. Players like Daigo, Xiaohai, Itabashi, they're really good at adjusting their rhythm. They can switch it in an instant. Yagyu also writes of using opposing timings. So if your opponent's playing fast, play slow. If they're playing slow, play fast. We see the principle of controlling the timing rather than allowing the opponent the advantage of control.
Not quite my tempo. It's all good. No worries. Here we go. 5, 6, 7.
Well, there you have it. The fireball. Playing with fire is not for everyone. It's kind of a dangerous way to play. You must be willing to accept that you might get jumped in on. Daigo said he grits his teeth every time he throws a fireball. To play the way of the fireball, we must find balance. Balance between space, opportunity, risk, reward, ourselves. It's quite complex and probably daunting if you never played a fireball character or a fighting game with these concepts in them. So we're gonna have to accept that it's gonna take time to be proficient with the fireball. With every fireball that we throw, we're collecting data. That was a good fireball, that wasn't a good one. We must build up our experience and strengthen our intuition. We must learn how to reflect and know when we're getting predictable, learn the beat of our own rhythm, then learn to control the opponents. All of this is gonna take time, my friends. Well, thanks for watching. There are many ways to the top of the mountain, and I hope you find yours.
Help me find a way to master the Hadoken.
I do not know how to use it as a martial art.
All right, but somebody's got to be able to teach me this power.
I'm sorry. I know of no one alive who is familiar with it. You must look within yourself. Nobody can tell you how to go about it. You must find your own way.
Or you can just play one of these characters.